close-up whisper of every classic vintage phone, and not so vintage, that I want, and whether I have them or not. Without a beard you can really see my triple chin. Sony Ericsson, I want the W800, the K750i, which I actually owned in 2006, the T68i, which was Sony Ericsson's first camera phone which had a module, the P900, which is a smartphone of sorts, the W950, which I actually own, the K800, which I own, the W888, which I think, I'm not sure what that one is, the W980, which is the really cool flip phone, the Satio, which was one of their touchscreen phones, which wasn't Android. It was I think it was the first phone with a 12 megapixel camera. And the Sony Ericsson Play, which was their PlayStation slide-out phone. But I've never seen that go for less than £200, and for a single core, I'm not paying that. Obviously I have others, but from Samsung I want the A200 flip phone, A800, fairly sure this is a slide phone. I basically went through GSM Arena, every phone ever released by these brands, and wrote down the ones I want. The E870, not sure. The P300, I think that was the Levi, like a square phone. D300, that was a sliding phone. The Galaxy S, like the very first one. The K-Zoom, the Galaxy K-Zoom, which was a full-fledged smartphone with a 20 automatic camera zoom. The AT&S NP, I don't know what that is. I want the original Gears watch. The P400, not sure. The C180, not sure. The X830, not sure. The F480, I'm fairly sure I own one, and that was their first touchscreen. I think it was called the Toco. Their first touchscreen, which not Android, which really hit it big. And the U750. Oh, not quite sure. Random phones, I want the Alcatel OT808. And I think that was a sliding Android phone, which had it's not capacitive, what's the other kind of touch? The touch you have to actually push it. The Palm Pre or Palm Pixie. The O2 Cocoon, which was a flip phone exclusive to O2 that had MP3 and stuff. And the Panasonic VS Flip V56. I had that, loved it. The Blackberries I want. The Z30. I had that several times. I adored that phone. That was one of the first phones where the speakers on it were phenomenal for the time. The 8310 or 8330 or 8320, the first curve phone. The 8300 was the base. The 8310 had Wi-Fi, and the 8320 had GPS, I think. The Storm 1 and 2, I own them both. The Style 9670, I think that was one of their first touchscreen. The Classic, I don't know, Blackberry 10. Passport and Passport SE, which you can now do new things with, I believe. I'm trying to think. The 9780, the perfect Blackberry phone for me. The 9900, that's the bold. The Torch 9800, that was their sliding one. And the Priv, which was their first Android one. I actually own a Key 2 already, so that's why it's not on the list. The Ericsson, as it goes. The T39, T68, T20E, T28, and the PF768. I have no idea what those are. There was one of those which was my first flip phone, which I liked. From HTC. Apparently the 5710, the M8, that was their first Android phone, which I think it was like one of the first unibody metal ones, and it was fucking great. The S630, not sure on that one. The S740, the Hero, that was HTC made a number of phones for other manufacturers that they licensed under different names. The TYNN2, the Chuckle, and the 7 Pro. Not quite sure what those are. Other random ones. I want the Bosch Com 509. I own 2 of them, but they don't work, and they were $19.99. My mate had one, and it was called El Brico. Sorry, excuse me. He called it El Brico because it was massive. The HP Elite X3, that was a dockable Windows phone. Windows slider. I've got that written down. I think it was by HP? No, it can't be HP. There was a sliding Windows phone with a full keyboard. The Microsoft Kin, which died quickly. The Microsoft Duo, which goes for crazy expensive. And the Lumia 1520. I've looked at getting numerous Windows phone, but the Lumia 1520 was the 6-inch one they did, which at the time it came out was huge. And I own a working one of those. We're on to Nokia. The 808 PureView, that was there. It was like a 108 megapixel phone. I think it was 108. I might be exaggerating some of it, but it was this huge Symbian megapixel. The 5800 Express, that was their first mainstream touchscreen phone. The N97, similar but for business. The N900, I think it was like a Linux based phone. The 8110, can't think what that one is. The 6210 or 6310i, that was a very business focused phone. The 3510, 3410, 3310, which I also own. The 3510i, which is the 3510 but with a colour screen. I don't know autism, I have phonetism. The 8910, that was a metal one. The 5210, what was that one? I can't think of it. The 5510 was the first QWERTY keyboard I ever used. It was a sideways one. It was also my first ever MP3 player. 3650, not quite sure what that one is. 6810, not sure. The N-Gauge, that's a pipe dream. The 72 series, the N7 series was their first smartphone. I got the N73, the 6600. That was the first camera phone I ever owned, and I love that phone. I've still got videos of that. They're 7 seconds long and 0.3, 360p, if that. If anyone's interested, I'll put a bunch of those together and upload it in the comments. I was 20 at the time. The 7600, I think that was the weird square phone they The N70, 72, 73, that was the those phones. The N90 and N93, I think that was like a flip phone and a twist one with a camera. 3250, I'm not sure. The E61, that was their first proper Blackberry style. The N95, everyone knows what that phone is. That was their first breakout smartphone. It was so good. The 5700, I can't think. The Prism, very sexy phone. The Nokia 8800. Now, this is one of those phones that I will never own because when they came out, they were fucking expensive. They were like the premium, like, phone. And I would never own one. More random ones. The Amazon Fire phone. What a failure. I own one. Works. The Dell Streak. That was like, they released it as a 5-inch phone, and it was like the first touchscreen Android with a 5-inch screen, which was massive at the time, but now you go, a bit small. The Venue Pro. That was the one, and the G1, the very first Google phone, like Android phone. By Motorola, I want the StarTAC. I own 3, 1 boxed, 1 working, 1 in perfect condition, not all the same one. The U9 Pebble, made a video already. Crazer, own, boxed, not recorded. The Aura, that was one of their like twisty ones. They kind of like slipped up and around. I've got a cheaper version of it. The Flip Out, which was like this god awful square Android phone. The Atrix, that was a concept kind of phone where it was like a Android phone, and then you could kind of clip it into something and it would turn it into a tablet or a PC. And the Moto Z and accessories. So the Moto Z was like a one of the first phones that had like what do they call them? Not accessories, but like modules where you can kind of clip on the back to improve battery or get camera and stuff. They were cool. The LG, I want the U8120. That was the first 3G flip phone I ever owned. It was really cool. The View T, one of their first touchscreens. The Prada, similar. What else? CT635, I'm not sure. The BL40 chocolate. God, that was a sexy phone. One of the first capacitive screens I ever used. The Nexus 4. The Nexus line was Google's official Android, like stock Android one before they had the Pixel. And like each generation, I think like Samsung made the first one, LG made a couple of stuff. And I killed that phone because it slipped off my knee on the toilet and died. The Flex 102, just for an interesting thing. The Wing, their last ever phone. The Wine Smart, not sure. The V50, I think that's a flip phone. The KE820, no idea. And the 3D Android. There was a time when like the 3DS just come out and like, you know, 3D TV's Avatar. It was about 2011, and they released some phones which had like a 3D screen. Yeah, those are ones I want. If anyone knows where to get them in the UK for reasonable prices, comment, hit me up on Vinted. I'll include my thing in the below. Alright, cheers.